Think about it for a second. What's the most human thing there is? It's not talking. It's not cooking. A lot of people would say burying the dead, stopping everything, digging a hole, and gently laying someone you loved inside it. That feels like it's hours and hours alone. So let me ask you something that sounds simple. When did we actually start doing this? You'd assume science has the exact date nailed down. It doesn't. And the reason why is a whole lot stranger than you'd think. Let's start with what almost everyone believes, and probably you too. We grow up hearing that burying the dead is a kind of border. On one side, the animals. When a creature dies, the body just stays there. On the other side, us. Beings with feeling, with memory, with a soul, depending on how you want to put it. And there's a second part to this belief, an even stronger one, that this is only possible because we have a big brain. A brain capable of understanding death, of feeling grief, of imagining an afterward. Big brain, feeling, ritual. Burying the dead would be proof that we think differently from everything else in nature. Makes sense, right? Hold on to that idea gently, because that's exactly the idea that's about to break. Except it's not that simple. First of all, science doesn't know the date when burials began. Every time someone finds an older grave, the line gets pushed further back. But that's not even the biggest problem. The biggest problem is this. Maybe the first ones to bury their dead weren't humans at all. And here's where it gets wild. Because the prime suspect for the oldest burial in the world was a creature with a brain one-third the size of yours. About the size of an orange. How does an orange bury somebody? Hang on, let's build this up layer by layer. First layer, what the textbooks say. The burials nobody argues about are pretty old. In caves in what is now Israel, places like Kafze and School, archaeologists found bodies of Homo sapiens from roughly 100,000 years ago. And these weren't bodies tossed in any old way. They were lying on their sides, with their little legs tucked up, in the position of a sleeping baby. Some with red ochre powder sprinkled over them, others with objects placed beside them. That doesn't happen by accident. Someone placed that body there, on purpose. And the Neanderthals, our cousins, did the same thing. So for a long time, the answer seemed settled. Humans and Neanderthals about 100,000 years ago. Case closed. But then, second layer, the impossible cave. In 2013, explorers enter a cave system in South Africa called Rising Star. To reach the final chamber, you have to squeeze through a gap 7 inches wide. 7 inches. That's narrower than a laptop. And down there, in this place that's almost impossible to reach, in total darkness, piles of bones. From a brand new species named Homo naledi. A small creature, part like us, part ancient. And with that tiny brain. Dated to around 250,000 years ago, much older than the burials in Israel. The question that sends a chill down your spine. How did these bodies end up in the most unreachable spot in the whole cave? Third layer, the bombshell. The team that found the bones gave an explosive answer. They were placed there, on purpose, carried through the darkness, deep into the chamber, and laid down. In other words, a burial. The oldest burial ever seen, done not by us, but by a creature with a brain the size of an orange. Do you see what that does to the idea you were holding on to gently back at the start? If it's true, then burying the dead does not require a giant brain. It is not something only we do. And that neat little border between us, the ones who feel, and them, the rest of nature, just blurs. And here's the twist inside the twist. Because science did not swallow this story. Just the opposite. It kicked off one of the fiercest fights in all of paleontology. A number of researchers looked at the very same bones and said, hold on, maybe nobody buried anything. Maybe water dragged the bodies inside. Maybe the cave was a natural trap where these poor creatures fell in and couldn't get out. Maybe the sediment covered everything on its own over thousands of years. And here's the most delicious part. To this day, they still haven't reached an agreement. The dispute is ongoing. Some say it was a burial. Others say it was nature. And nobody can prove it once and for all, because proving what went through the mind of a creature 250,000 years ago is nearly impossible. So, when did we start burying our dead? The honest answer is, we don't know. And the reason we don't know is the most fascinating part of all. Because this simple question ran straight into a much bigger one that nobody can answer. What actually counts as burying? Does it require a big brain? Does it require understanding death? Or is it enough to just want to move that body out of sight, in the dark, with your own hands? You started this video thinking that burying the dead was the sharp line that separates us from everything else. And maybe it's the opposite. Maybe it's one of the places where that line is blurrier than we ever imagined. A gesture that might be older than our own species. Done, who knows, by a mind we wouldn't even call human. The world and our own history is stranger and more fascinating than it seems. And if something as intimate as burying the ones we love might not have started with us, it leaves one more question hanging in the air. What else do we think we invented, but didn't?